Our next speaker is a VP and a distinguished analyst with Gartner, specialising in IT sales and channel innovation. And when I say analyst, this woman loves to analyse. She is rampant on Twitter, YouTube, and as a blogger. Recent online thought pieces she has penned include Sales Leaders, Is Your Gut Still Good Enough? A Perfect Quota-Killing Sales Machine, Is It Possible? And probably my favourite, the 90s called They Want Their Channel Program Back. In 2014, she was voted WPC's Best External Speaker, and her work on the future of IT sales in particular saw her receive Gartner's 2013 Worldwide Thought Leadership Award. As such, she is the perfect person to run a critical eye across the industry and try and read the tea leaves. Please a big round of applause for Tiffany Bova.
Well, good morning, everybody. Okay, I was worried. I knew you were out there somewhere. Well, I will confess a little bit that I'm slightly an analyst, but I like to actually say I'm a recovering seller disguising as an analyst. Because I spend 100% of my time really trying to make sure that you guys are really successful working with manufacturers and vendors and service providers like Microsoft. I was asked this year at WPC, prior to WPC, would I like to keynote WPC in the US or keynote WPC in Australia? And I picked Australia. So you guys are doing some really great stuff, and it's really just a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time challenging you, even extending the conversation Phil has been having over the last hour about what's important for partners to be successful going forward, and what are the things that you may need to consider slightly differently than what you have in the past. Because I think we are at a crossroads. I have a great history with Microsoft even before this role. 15 years ago, I was Microsoft's very first shared web hosting company in the world out of the US, and I got to know Microsoft very well because I got cease and desist letters every day on not breaking up their SPLA licenses. So that was sort of the beginning of my relationship with Microsoft. And then from there, I worked for Alar, and then from there, I worked for many value-added resellers. And so it's sort of a full-circle moment for me to now be engaged with Pip and Phil and the rest of the worldwide team on really making sure that we're designing and thinking about what the industry needs to be successful both today and going forward. When you look out across the landscape, I think Phil did a great job of sort of highlighting the questions that are important to you. What kind of partner should I be when I grow up? In a couple of years, what is it going to look like? What are the things that my customers cared about? How do I craft a value proposition that resonates with my customers? Both the customers I have today as well as the customers potentially I don't know. Do you have the right technical skills? Do you have the right selling skills? Are you thinking about the business in this new modern era of both cloud first and mobile first, but more importantly, a much more empowered and engaged customer? And I think that's the most disruptive thing we have to deal with today. When you look out across where we are in 2015, if you saw me at WPC a number of years ago, it's been 9 years running that I've had the pleasure of presenting there. But probably 5 years ago, I really started talking about the partner of the future was going to be somebody who was hybrid and IP-driven, recurring revenue, more services. And what's interesting for me is I've seen much of that happen. And I think you guys are the unsung heroes of really the adoption that's happening in the marketplace. Without your investments in your business, the partner of 2020 isn't going to be possible. We really need to start to challenge what we are today, as well as what we want to become going forward. So for us, from a Gartner perspective, I like to put this into context because I remember having this discussion, many a debate over cocktails, actually at WPC one year. And this conversation of cloud or not cloud, we got into this very heated debate. It was myself and a handful of the Partner Advisory Council partners. And this really makes me feel comfortable that we've finally made this transition where I think everyone's starting to understand that cloud is not the end state. It is really just the platform for the next transition of where we think technology can actually take our customers. While we as an industry believe that it's really about what we think about the shiny new technology that's coming out of vendors and manufacturers, it is really about what technology can do for your customers. What can we help your customers achieve that they never thought possible without using technology? And I think the cloud is the foundation by which you can achieve some of those goals and help your customers achieve them. When we start thinking about what is happening in your region, I wanted to make sure that I hit all the check boxes of what you guys asked me. Once you heard I was coming down here, I got a slew of emails, which I really appreciate, to make sure that I contextualize this for your market. And so here is some top technology priorities for your industry. On one side, it's Australia and New Zealand. On the other side, it is rest of world. And while I don't like talking about products per se, in the list of products individually in isolation, because it really is a combination of many things that are pulled together that are now delivering outcome-based services and outcome-based solutions. But what you will notice here is that a lot of these things are the foundation by which we see those more empowered customers actually growing. If it's BI, analytics, cloud, mobility, whatever it might be, the point is that you can start to see we're moving away from these industrialized solutions that tend to be a little bit more heavy, and thinking about how do we actually craft solutions that can be much more fluid and timely in the market to help our customers. When you start thinking about public cloud adoption in Australia versus the rest of the world, you can see it's across the map between what you are going to get on-premise, what you're going to get in private cloud, what you're going to get in hybrid cloud, what you get in infrastructure as a service, who's investing in it, why they're investing in it. But the good news is there are many cases where Australia, as a market in and of itself, is really being aggressive in its acquisition and usage of cloud. I remember when I was back being that shared hosting company for Microsoft back in 2000, that I used to have conversations with IT personnel as well as VARs, quite frankly, and I'd go in and I'd say, I get that you like having lunch with your server. Oh, you guys are there. Okay, just making sure you're still there. Lunch with your server, deploying SQL, and all of those things. But really, if you give it to us, we can handle that for you. They're like, oh no, we want to have lunch with our server. And what's really great is I think we've finally moved past maybe having lunch with them, and we're okay just maybe having breakfast with them, because we haven't totally made the transition out of wanting to make sure we hang on to some of this stuff. But ultimately, there are some very aggressive markets, in Australia being one of them. As Pip mentioned yesterday, you guys are making really tremendous investments in those kinds of solutions. Once again, pushing the boundary on use of mobility. While I like mobility from a device perspective, mobility is really about putting the power in the hands of consumers. And when I say consumer, I mean a super consumer who is a business user. So we are all consumers, as the example given earlier by the partner, that buying a car is very different than it used to be. But the person on the other end of buying that car is a consumer, and then on Monday morning when they show up to work, they're a business employee, and they want the same experience on the business side that they had in buying the car. Because now our consumer life is bleeding into our expectations of our business life. So there's very much this transition from B2C to B. So the behavior of consumer in all of us. And this is really being pushed forward by mobility. In order to get from mobile and cloud and the adoption in infrastructure as a service and the adoption on software as a service, we have to start to think about the market very differently. We as an industry are very, very comfortable thinking about IT in the data center, selling to IT, having industry technical capabilities, having MCSEs, having all the technical certifications that we need. And when you think about the journey forward for a customer, it really is about running at 2 speeds. And these 2 speeds allow us to focus on what's important both from a business and IT perspective, as well as what's important from a customer-facing perspective. And those 2 speeds, as you can see by the image of the Formula car and the 18-wheeler truck, is very different. And those companies that are being successful in doing this, when we go out and survey our CIO clients and our IT clients, all the way from a small enterprise to a mid-enterprise to a global-size enterprise, this is one of the things that challenges them. Running in 2 speeds or being bimodal is challenging even the largest of organizations. And if it's challenging end users, I make the huge sweeping assumption that it's going to challenge our channel. So Phil is a very data-driven leader. I am a gut-driven leader. As was mentioned with one of my blogs, data is kind of not my friend. I'm not really sure how to navigate my way through it. I'm a gut sales leader that sort of says, I think this is what's happening. I know I'm directionally correct. And bimodal has been something that I grabbed onto as part of our research that I thought would be really helpful to the indirect channel to realize that when you are comfortable selling in mode 1, speed 1, that's very predictable. There's a project, there's a start date, there's an end date. You sell to IT, you sell to sourcing and procurement, you understand what that means. Speed 2 is very exploratory. I'm not sure if it's going to work. I want to fail fast. I want to try it again. And running in those two speeds, our CIOs are actually telling us is one of their biggest challenges because their talent pool is very comfortable in 1, and they don't know how to behave in 2. I think our industry, as a channel, your technical talent, very comfortable in 1, struggling to figure out how do I work at the pace of number 2, especially from a delivery perspective. And so not only do we think that working in 2 modes is important, we believe that 40% of businesses will actually be bimodal. And going forward, we think that 75% of them will be bimodal going forward. Now, we also have another stat that says of those who try to be bimodal, it is a significant perspective or group that actually will fail. So they will try to run bimodal, they will try to run at both speeds, they will try to sell at both speeds, and they will not be successful. And the way I have seen channel partners actually run bimodal is by popping up a separate, distinct organization that has engineering talent and selling talent that is selling to speed 2. Yes, it's true, Speed 2 happens to be more predominantly line of business buyers. Speed 1 tends to be more IT buyers. So running in those 2 speeds is also about who you're selling to, what you're selling, what the expectations are, and what the outcomes are. When you start going after Speed 2, you need very different skills. You have to start to aggressively develop. So many of the partners that came up here gave you fantastic nuggets of information that coming from another partner should be golden for you. Because we can all stand up here on stage and tell you the way we think it's going to be, but you guys are the only ones that can action it. And one of the biggest mistakes I see made from the channel today is that they don't make investments in the kinds of skills that they need to be running in a bimodal or hybrid environment, thinking about digital marketing a little bit differently. You know, I have to say I'm fascinated by the 4 marketers and 1 salesperson. I think that's a great cocktail conversation. Because, you know, as a salesperson, you know, an ex-recovering salesperson, I always think that marketing and sales has this wonderful love-hate relationship. So going from 4 salespeople to 1 and 1 to 4 is really, I actually think I want to blog about it. But it's a great conversation. So for any of the marketers in the room, you should be proud that that's the direction that it's going. For the sellers in the room, this is a wake-up call that we have to think differently about the skills and the engagements we have with customers going forward. And so this isn't just about investing on the technology side, it's also about thinking about popping up clusters of talent, looking out into new industries and new means in which you can deliver. When you now start thinking about what are the things I have to deliver, right, going forward, what are the things I have to deliver, I want to make sure that the applications that I'm putting out to market and the services I'm putting out to market are much more about building solutions. That's that IP differentiator that Phil talked about a little bit ago. It's something I've really been trying to push out to the market, that you have to think about application development and API development and thinking about orchestration and governance and compliancy at the service catalog layer. That's the only thing that makes hybrid and bimodal work. If you're reselling a SKU, I don't care if it's Office 365 or Azure, that's not IP differentiation. How many of you in the room sell Office 365? How many of you think you do it the best? You better all raise your hand, right? So what makes you different? This is what starts to make you different. You have to start to think about businesses focusing on the fact that end users are trying to transition to digital as well. So you have to think about developing a kind of lens and looking at how people work, how they're going to work in the future, what they expect from technology. Remember, this is a relationship and a mind shift and a cultural change from going from B to C to B. That consumer in the middle has very explicit expectations when it comes to digital. And what happened as the market started to shift was we started talking about something called the nexus of forces. The nexus of forces to us is social, mobile, cloud, and information. And when you think about bimodal, you've got this pre-digital era of mode 1, a waterfall kind of project, the kinds of things we're very comfortable doing. It sort of streams through this nexus of forces. And the impact that that nexus has is, on the bottom side of this transition, is businesses start to behave in a much more digital fashion. This is about digitizing the business. This isn't just e-commerce. And having digital marketing isn't about search engine optimization. This is about completely reimagining what digital means. So when you think about the channel in pre-nexus to post-nexus, the new normal is that you have to figure out as organizations how to run at both speeds. If you think about bimodal and you think about speed 1, where it's very predictable, speed 2, less predictable, much more fluid, you're going to need the different skills, both technical and selling, thinking about digital marketing in new ways. At the end of the day, that's the disruptor that we're feeling. And I think for any of you who have been in this industry for a long time, I've been in technology now for about 20 years, selling it until I took this job. And then now, obviously, I do a little bit more analyzing than selling. But I can tell you that this is probably the biggest shift I've ever witnessed. I'm not talking about from a technology standpoint, because I think Moore's Law shows that things get cheaper and faster and more economical and more efficient over time. I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I said, I remember when one of my last projects, in mode 1, I was selling to a large law firm in the US, and I sold compact ProLiant servers, so I'm really going to date myself here. And we were deploying WordPerfect. I'm really dating myself. Unlike floppy drives or something. And anyway, so I was constrained on 6 gig drives that were, for those of you, right, this big and about that thick. Anybody want to guess how much that 6 gig drive was 17 years ago? $6,000. Good guess. Exactly what it was. And now you can buy at, Woolworth over there for 15 gigs for about $7, and you go, and it's this big. You go, I've been in this business too long, because you've clearly watched this whole thing cycle. But the new normal is that that's what people expect. And so how do you add value on something from a pre-nexus to a post-nexus, and the new normal being something that is far more aggressive on the shift that we're seeing in the marketplace? And so what does it mean from an end user perspective? Be really specific here. We started talking about this a couple symposiums ago. We actually are having it in this hall in about 5 weeks again. But our Orlando symposium kicks off the first week of October, and we started talking about every company becoming an IT company. And I think everyone went, well, of course Gartner says that, because then, of course, you have more clients. Well, yes, but there's some reality to this as well. Have any of you been to a Disney property in the US in the last 2 years? You would notice that they have these new bands. They're kind of like your fitness bands that you would wear. And you can get anything you want. You can get into your hotel room. You can buy food. You can get into the park. They know everything you've done. They take that analysis. They can come up to you with a character, and they can say, we notice you've been standing in line for too long. We'd like to give you some water or a free meal or move you to the front of the line. They start all of a sudden to see your patterns and behaviors. And so why couldn't they sell it to somebody who they felt didn't compete with them? A local entertainment park or something like that, where they have huge crowds and they're trying to make sure they're monitoring that. So there's absolutely tremendous opportunity for them to be able to sell that. Or Philips light bulbs. Philips light bulbs in the US now are, I don't know, $1.99 maybe, so probably about $2.25 for you-ish. And you'd say that there's kind of nothing sexy about a light bulb. It illuminates a room, and they're all usually white. And so Philips said, how do we start to engage in this new experience and get people to feel that illumination is going to do something different for them, make them feel a mood? It's date night. They want to remember a sunset or a sunrise. Like this morning, I was up a little early because I'm on California time, that I watched the sunrise. So that's such a beautiful orange. Well, had I taken a picture of that with my phone and gotten home on Thursday and walked into my house and hit that color and had it connect to my Philips light bulb, it could have made my house inside that exact orange that I saw in the sunset. Now that light bulb is $50, and the device that powers it is $199. So I've gone from a $1.99 commodity, not so sexy device, to now a light bulb. So you say, well, Tiffany, what does this light bulb have to do with us in our industry? I had a partner actually come up to me when I got off of stage one day, at an Ingram Micro event, as a matter of fact. And I got off stage and he said, I've been trying to solve this problem for a call center for 18 months. I couldn't figure out how to let the call center manager on the floor know right away that he had a call center agent who was in trouble. He said, the light bulb. I can just make it yellow ahead of his head or red ahead of his head, and it's sending messages to very visually, someone doesn't have to be tied to their desk, that they can look up and make sure that the call center is operating appropriately. At $50 a head, it was more than what he was going to get on his instant messenger design that he was going to try to do, or what he was going to try to do from a software perspective. So once again, I say that this blur between B2C and B2B is very real. And then you can think about Coke. So if you look at Dynamics and SharePoint, they're powering some of what the new Coke machines are doing. That was innovated by a channel partner and really rethinking the way people are going to engage with their smartphone in front of a Coke machine and how they start to track new flavors and what people are doing so they can change their experiences while someone is standing in front of a Coke machine. Further to push that point for Coke, they believe they are 1 degree of separation away from every human being on this earth now, from their digital and social experience. That is a massive statement to say that between their Coke machines, what they buy in store, their apps, what they do digitally on Facebook and what they do on Twitter and what they do on LinkedIn, et cetera, they think they're 1 degree of separation away from every human being on earth. It's pretty astounding. Even further, you can think in the clothing business. Under Armour, if any of you know Under Armour or wear Under Armour, pretty soon it's going to have an RFID device in the Under Armour, and it's going to say, wow, Tiffany, you know, you've worn this shirt 50 times and you've only washed it 25. We're going to send you a new one. And it will be able to tell how many times you've run, how far you've run in that shirt, what you've done in that shirt, and Under Armour is now saying, you know what, we're totally a digital company. I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but we're completely pushing the envelope on it. This is really being driven by these new Internet of Things, right? It's the driving force between what we're having in the industry, whether it's air conditioning and cooling, whether it's lighting, whether it's clothing, whether it's food. At the end of the day, I want you guys to focus on what technology can do and look to participate in this broad ecosystem that's being created by the Internet of Things. There are lots of opportunity here on devices, but let me put it into a little bit of context. Many ways you can use things, from clothing to devices to machines, et cetera. And you have to think about what's the impact from a business perspective. So I like to lay it out and think about what does it impact for you on smart technologies, social mobile, analytics, et cetera, in Australia versus the rest of the world, in looking at the opportunities for you to say, look, I may have a customer who's a consumer business. How do I help them reimagine what they're doing? Are there things, are there applications, are there devices in a customer's environment that I have that if I knew more about, I could do different things? And you then have to start thinking about what does it mean when I start thinking about the Internet of Things, right? Because we could say, you know, it's just really not something we're interested in. At the end of the day, you actually start with a thing. So if you're wearing an exercise device around your wrist and it's talking to your phone, it's feeding data one way. It's capturing that data, but that is a thing talking to analytics to another thing. You then move to the thing talks to another thing, right? So my device talks to my phone, then talks to my laptop. And those things start communicating in a certain way. But you could imagine, or not, that all of a sudden your fitness band on your wrist talks to your phone, that then talks to your scale in your bathroom, that then locks your refrigerator and says, stay away. It's coming. That is thing to thing to thing. There's no reason that one thing can't talk to the scale that talks to your phone, that talks to your refrigerator and says, you've actually eaten 2,500 calories, you've burned nothing, you haven't taken one step all day, get away from the refrigerator. And maybe sends it to all your friends, who knows? I mean, it can get crazy. Then you get from thing to people to systems to other things. And it really starts to reshape all the use cases. And so in that example I gave with Under Armour, or the one I just gave about the refrigerator, we now have the opportunity for devices like washing machines to talk to the detergent company to then say to the retailer that sells online that you've done 25 loads, the amount of dishwashing or washing machine detergent that you have on hand only has 27 loads. It's time to reorder, and it reorders for you. Or you can push the button, and it reorders for you. Now, if you think about that in context, if you have a small business customer that has a washing company, that's got washers and dryers for people to use in communities. This could tell it's time for service, you need more soap, you need more whatever, and all of a sudden that small business has become much more efficient by using the Internet of Things in new ways. So don't just think about it from a consumer perspective, see how you can apply it from a B2B perspective. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We started talking about 3D printing and sort of the impact it may have, and when you look across the landscape of what e-tailers are doing, we have one large e-tailer in the US who is talking about consumers being able to order online, and then over 2 or 3 hours, as the truck drives to your house, they're actually manufacturing whatever it is you ordered. That is very disruptive from a supply chain perspective. So you have to think about having your strategy and everything you hear through these couple of days to maximize the future of where you need to be, not glorify the past of thinking about printing in isolation, or thinking about things in isolation, or thinking about the consumer space as being so different from what we do in the B2B space. And this is a great example of it. You can reimagine casts. If any of you have ever had a broken bone, as a matter of fact, I actually broke my baby toe on Saturday before I got on an airplane coming over here, and of course we can't put a cast on a baby toe, so I'm just pretending my baby toe doesn't exist today because it hurts. But if you were to put a cast on it, it used to be something that was very chalky, right? You could write names on it, and then they came out with pink or blue or yellow, but at the end of the day, it always looked like a cast. This is a completely different usage of cast. What that does is it actually sends pulses that the doctor can control. The doctor can see how your bones are healing and give pressure in the right points. Once again, you're thinking, this is very consumer. What is in this for me? Well, if you're selling to doctor's offices, is there an opportunity here for them to provide better care? When you start reimagining the things we've always done with the new lens of what technology can do, it becomes endless. More importantly, I really want you to think about how technology can make it personal, make it engaging, get people to stop for a second and go, wow, I never thought that possible. These are power lines in Switzerland. Really amazing. Can you imagine driving down the road and going, whoa, who is that holding the power lines? And it's only a small stretch of space, but what ends up happening is you won't forget it. So you could have just made them steel and made them the same way. Or you can say, let me reimagine something like the light bulb that's $1.99, or the power stand that has looked the same around the globe no matter where you were. I'm guessing that if you saw this on the side of the road, you'd stop and take a picture. I think it's pretty spectacular. Even more so was a quote from a very well-known designer in the world for fashion that said there was nothing been more disruptive to his industry, to the industry of fashion, than 3D printing. He could never have imagined being able to create this kind of beauty with a hand or a machine. He actually said it's not possible. The only way I could be this imaginative in designing the future of fashion was to use 3D printing. The dress on the left was over $100,000. It's not for the consumer to buy, but it was really about thinking about fashion, blending with technology, and completely having new experiences. Once again, if you're in the industry or going after the vertical of fashion and design, what could you bring to the table besides powering their back-end office systems, but really thinking about how do you extend that out to the customer. When you talk about the customer, for me, if you've watched anything I've said over the last couple of years, for me, the most disruptive thing in the market today is the customer. The customer is disrupting everything because they're more demanding. They're more smart about what it is they want, what they expect, what they want from you, and what they want from us. And so when they're on this acquisition path, as many have mentioned this morning in the earlier segment, is that they're on their own journey. And many people have said, look, we think they're X% or Y% through the buyer journey by the time they ever show up to you. That percentage is not quite as important to me as what is shown here around where do they go. When a customer is looking for information, where is it that they go? They're 4th or 5th on the list. They start having interactions with the provider or you as a channel partner, which means they're going to 3 other places. So the examples and the insights and the recommendations that were given around what kinds of investments you have to make on digital marketing is huge here. But let me be clear, this isn't about you talking about you. This isn't about you repurposing what's given to you by your providers. This isn't about talking about it on the technology side. It's about really helping to educate. And why this is important and why it's important you understand where they go is because it's all about building trust. The customers believe that the highest amount of trust they build on their journey is before they talk to a provider or before they talk to a sales rep. Because if they talk to a sales rep or a provider, they feel like it's very biased towards whatever it is you as a channel partner are trying to sell. Because you're a Microsoft partner, you're not going to walk in and try and sell them something else. So they have a trust issue around the information that they're able to gather from their peer network. So on the left-hand side of this, you can see that the trust is highly driven by third parties before they acquire. Once they acquire, you have the ability to drive the trust even further with the services that you provide them. This is where they go. They want to see expert reviews, associations and communities, analyst reports and interactions, and technology articles that talk about broadly what's happening in the industry, and then you're quoted, or you're a point of subject matter expertise, or you're the expert that they ask when something happens. If you're in a vertical, you want to be connected to the association that your key vertical is part of. And it always needs to be this give, and you hope you take back as they go on a journey. Here are the kinds of content they look for. They want live demonstrations. They want customer case studies. But they don't want just white paper case studies you produce. They actually want ones where the customer is talking on your behalf without you really engaging in that entire exercise. I like to say that you want to not just acquire customers, you actually want to acquire future advocates for you. The more you can get your customers to talk about you and your business, the better off you'll be. There's not enough marketing money in the world that will ever take the place of your existing customers telling your story on their terms in front of their peers. You can't buy it. The only way you can do it is deliver really fantastic services, always keeping the customer at the center of the decisions that you make. Furthermore, when they go looking for this, and then they reach out to you, they reach out to sales, they reach out to your sales rep, the last thing you want to do is tell them something they already know. They're frustrated by the fact that we continue to, when they pick up the phone to talk to one of your sales reps, we repeat what they found online on their own. So there's no additional value. There's a slide I have that I'm not showing in here that actually shows that the least valuable interaction when they reach out to engage and looking for more value-based insights during their journey, their least valuable is with sales. Third year in a row, sales is last on the list. The reason that's happening is they reach out to the provider or the partner, the sales rep ends up telling them something they already know. So you have to get much better at knowing who your customer is, either by vertical, by outcome, by pain point, and that's the story you want to tell. We also started saying that if technology is very different, it's being driven by digital, the customer's more empowered, they're on a new journey, the next thing is that the customer experience is the new battleground. At the end of the day, you can win or lose based on the interaction and engagement your brand has with your potential customers at any point in time. So ultimately, when you think about competition, I want you to think about it not only from a technology standpoint and a services standpoint. Remember, that's very mode one, very speed one, very traditional sourcing and procurement, IT managers, CIOs. But now the business, your customer's business, is competing on their customer's experience, and you can help them be better at it. And so your product is less relevant than the experience your customers' customers have with it. And it's not only Gartner's that's saying this. There are a number of surveys out there that are showing that customer experience will actually, remember, building the trust cycle on the left before they become a customer is highly influential. Once they become a customer, external becomes less of a measurement for them, and now it becomes their experience with you. And so customer experience is not only before and during and after the sales cycle, it's the entire time. So every touch that your brand has impact on your ability to upsell, cross-sell, and continue to expand your sphere of influence, the amount of products and services you sell, and the value that you bring to the business. And so if you can tell that value in new ways, through new framing, you can really start to differentiate yourself. As I asked a minute ago, how many of you sell Office 365? How many of you think are the best at it? And everyone keeps their hands up. I think you all should. But you have to learn that customer experience is now changing the game. So customer experience, just like digital marketing, is not search engine optimization or banner ads or keywords, et cetera. Customer experience is not customer service. Customer experience is not user experience. Customer experience is not digital content. It's actually all of it. It's all of it together. It's every single time your brand touches a customer, whether it's a customer service rep, whether it's digitally, whether it's socially, whether it's face-to-face, online, in chat, in video, it's all of it. And so you really have to reimagine where and how you want your brand to be perceived going forward. Don't forget about the experience that your customers have when they engage with you. So as I did a blog about the 90s called They Want Their Channel Programs Back, which the Phils of the world really enjoyed that blog, I'm sure. I wanted to bring it full circle to the direct selling. So the 1880s were actually known for being the grandfather of the way we sell today. Winner's circle, playbooks, outcome-based selling, demonstrations, all of that was founded by the CEO of NCR, John Henry Patterson. So we think we're just, we're really revolutionizing the way we sell. I'm solution selling now. My sales team is using playbooks. I now have a demo facility. So did he in 1885. We have to rethink the way we sell if technology and the customer is that different. We get trapped in this world of this linear selling cycle. I call 100 people, 10 people call me back, one person sets a meeting, I go show a live demo, I move from the live demo, I give them a price, I traipse the executives in, the executives help me close the deal, now we start negotiating, I'm deploying a pilot. How many of you do that? Nobody raised their hands. You guys are the smartest bunch in the entire globe. I know you do, and that's okay. We all just got to embrace what we are and figure out how are we going to do it a little bit differently. We can't go on this linear journey because the customers are actually bouncing between each of those phases of their journey at their own pace. So when you start to have a sales problem, here's what you do. End of quarter, end of year, I'm not going to hit my numbers. What does that mean? I know what it means. I need to retrain my sales staff. I need to change my recruitment efforts. I need to deploy new tools and systems. How many of you do that? Once again, the smartest group. So what happens is, if you go to the same well to fix the problem, yet the buyer is totally different, they value different things, it's not going to be as effective. So if you try to fix your sales issues and your go-to-market issues with the same lens of, I know, I'll change the comp plan, I'll have a winner's circle, I'll train them on solution selling, or challenger selling, or outcome-based selling, or storytelling, or, I'm going to hire new kinds of skills, subject matter experts, out of industry, all those things, and I'm going to start to deploy new tools for CRM and analytics and social selling and tweeting and LinkedIn, and I'm going to do all those things. It doesn't fix the fundamental issue that the customer's in more control and we don't have that linear journey anymore. We have to understand what those implications are to our sellers and to the organization to become more predictable in the business. Because of this, the channel is in flux. And we've only touched the surface of where this channel is going to go. I believe you guys are the unsung heroes on how technology can be deployed and really change the landscape of business. And in order to do that, you have to take the time to understand what does that mean across all aspects. What's the product? Who's the customer? How do they want to buy? What ends up happening is we get stuck on what's the product and we're going to go sell the product, and it doesn't matter who the customer is, we'll sell it to anyone that'll buy it. And then you have a customer experience problem. So when you start thinking about what it means, you've got to take time to understand, but you also have to think that the ecosystem is going to look very different. By 2020, the mix of partners will be this combination of classic resellers, which we still need a tremendous amount of, partners that become very hybrid in their delivery, understanding how to work in mode 1 and mode 2. And there's going to be many partners that are born in the cloud exclusively and don't do anything on-premise. And that's where we see a lot of innovation happening, is on those born in the cloud guys. Where we have a huge gap in the market today is really in this hybrid partner who's able to run at both speeds and understands the value of digital and understands this new buyer journey and thinks about outcomes and reimagines how technology can solve big problems in the world. And so at the end of the day, the 2020 partner mix may be the same number of partners, but you all will be focused on very different things. And that's what's really exciting about being in the position I'm in. I get to travel the world and hear these fantastic stories of how you guys have completely reimagined your business and helped your customers figure out how to solve their biggest problems. And so you've got to rethink your role. At the end of the day, as I said, I bleed sales blood, so I want you to keep calm and sell more, obviously, because I think it's healthy for everybody to have that goal. But you have to make sure you question and rationalize every piece of your business. Am I marketing myself the right way? Am I hiring the right talent? Am I hiring people I've always hired? If I'm going to go after industries, do I need people who are subject matter experts in those industries and not just hire the guy from my competitor who's been beating me on all these deals that I've lost this year? Rethink what it means. Deliver compelling sales experiences. I can't stress this enough. If you can change the engagement with your customers, even if you're not as good technically or don't have as many references as maybe the guys you're competing against, you can still win on that experience. So what does the Channel 2020 look like for me? I think you guys are absolutely leading business transformation for your customers. You've got to understand what it means to your business, and then only then can you transfer it over to your customers. You have to deliver agile solutions between those two modes. You've got to think about everybody's in this nexus transition of pre and post nexus, the digital transformation, the new buyer, the new journey. This is not for the faint of heart, guys. This is a really rapid paced market that we think we've solved something. Over the last 6 months, you've done some heavy lifting and made a lot of changes, and then you turn around and the market's moved again. So we have to figure out how do we be and maintain agility in our business. Developing a new value base. I couldn't agree more with Phil on the IP and the importance of having your own intellectual property. Whatever makes you different. Could be your sales strategy, could be your digital approach, could be the solutions you put together, could be the packages and the integrated solutions you put together. But at the end of the day, I want you to be really focused on customer and market-led. Make decisions through the lens of the customer, not because it's interesting technically to you. Don't go find the market. See where the puck is going, as we say in the US, that Wayne Gretzky says, I don't go where the puck has been, I go where the puck is going. Figure out where it's going for you in the industry and the market you're leading, and that's where you want to go. So how do you survive and thrive in this rapidly changing market? In the last 2 sessions between Phil and I, we've thrown a lot of things at you that sounds like a lot of change. And Monday morning, you're going to go back and go, where do I begin? So the first thing I'd say to you is, I want you to step outside of your comfort zone. And when you step out of your comfort zone, I want you to do one thing. Pick one thing. What's the one thing you're going to change in your business between now and the end of the year? Is it going to be your digital footprint, the kinds of salespeople you hire, the understanding of hybrid, the new IP you're going to develop and deliver? Pick one thing. If you pick one thing, you can check it off your list. Because at the end of the day, I want you guys to dream big, set goals, take action, and hopefully I will see you at next year's WPC, or if I have to choose again, maybe I'll come back to Australia. But either way, it is my true privilege to be supported by many of you over the years in following my research and giving me feedback on what you either agree or don't agree with. And with that, I'm truly humbled, and I appreciate your time. Thank you guys very much.